You did not come here by accident, and what you are about to hear is not meant to satisfy idle curiosity, but to awaken something deep within you that has always been there. This is not a sermon, nor a new theory, but a journey back to the divine power that is already yours. Consciousness is the cause, life is the effect, and if you truly listen with your whole heart, you will not merely understand, you will remember each part of this journey is a doorway, and if you are willing to step through, your life will never be the same. For once you reconnect with the God consciousness, you can never return to living in unconsciousness. Consciousness is the cause, life is the effect. Every circumstance has its origin in an invisible pattern, and that pattern is consciousness. It is not action, not effort, not external conditions that shape life, but what is being held in the deepest layers of the mind. Life does not respond to words or wishes, but reflects the true nature of awareness. Thought is only the surface, while consciousness is the soil in which the seed of thought takes root and multiplies. No experience appears by chance. All are reflections from within. Every joy once lived, every fear once faced, every opportunity or loss once experienced can be traced to a level of awareness that has been nurtured long enough to take form in the outer world. One does not change life by rearranging external circumstances. One changes life by changing the central axis from which all experience flows, consciousness itself. Just as you cannot alter the image in a mirror by wiping the mirror, you cannot produce a new result while maintaining the same awareness. Any outward effort without an inner shift in consciousness is merely temporary resistance to the harvest already sown. Truth does not require belief to operate. The fact that consciousness produces results is a law, impartial, unchanging, and not waiting for permission. Those who understand it use it. Those who do not understand it are still subject to it. As with every other law of nature, if a person lives in constant anxiety, it is not because of circumstances, it is the result of a consciousness accustomed to believing in risk, in loss, in fear. If a person repeatedly finds themselves in conflict within relationships, it is not because of others. It is the outward display of an inner self divided and unreconciled. Consciousness is not positive thinking, repeated again and again. It is the underlying state, the invisible current shaping the entire structure of experience. Thoughts are the waves, consciousness is the ocean, and it is the ocean that determines the direction of every wave. Therefore, instead of asking what to do, the deeper question is, what am I being? Instead of striving to change the result, observe the quality of the consciousness being maintained each day. There is no need to search far for answers. Everything that is happening is already the answer. Life hides no secrets. It is open, honest, and clear, always revealing the true nature of the consciousness behind it. Those who do not understand this principle seek solutions from the outside. They change jobs, change relationships, change environments. Yet the same cycle appears again, different people, different settings, but the same old emotions, the same old results, the same old limitations. The reason is that consciousness has not changed. Those who understand this law are not fooled by appearances. They do not panic in adversity, nor do they place blind faith in luck. They know everything is but a reflection, and the one who has the authority to adjust that reflection is themselves. Look closely at a single day of living, and you will see the state of consciousness at work. When there is constant haste, it is a consciousness believing there is not enough time. When there is frequent anger, it is a consciousness threatened by the sense of powerlessness. When rest feels impossible, It is a consciousness that believes self-worth comes only from relentless effort. There is no need for guesswork. Every action, every reaction is a message from within consciousness, and if you know how to listen, life itself is teaching clearly the content you are carrying inside. Consciousness does not change on its own. It must be transformed through alert observation, through deliberate choice, through the commitment to live from truth instead of fear. This is not easy, but it is entirely possible, like redirecting the flow of a river. At first, the water may resist. Old currents may push back. New channels must be dug, but once the new course is set, the stream begins to run naturally toward its rightful place. When a person shifts awareness from lack to abundance, from fear to trust, from separation to unity, everything around them gradually realigns. There is no need to try to control the world, only to live in a state of consciousness that reflects the divine nature already present within. From that place, action becomes more precise. Choices become clearer. Results become lighter. Consciousness is the cause. Life is the effect. There is nothing new to learn, only the willingness to pause long enough to see clearly. And once you see, you can never return to living as before. For truth, once recognized, can never be forgotten. God consciousness, the highest state of human awareness. If there were a state of consciousness in which there was no fear, no lack, no sense of separation, only the full presence of peace, wisdom, and love, would you choose to live in that state, not as an ideal dream, but as a reality that can be lived every day, beginning right now, in this very breath? That state, Emmet Fox called God consciousness, the divine awareness. This is not a rare condition reserved for saints or sages. It is the highest level of perception, and also the most intimate, because it is the original nature every person already carries within. Though temporarily forgotten, God consciousness is not a destination. It is the origin. It does not require you to climb upward, but invites you to return home. It is not a product of the intellect, but the rising of the deepest intuition within the place where you know, without thinking, that you and God have never been apart. In the ordinary state of awareness, people operate from fear. Every decision is influenced by the question of what will happen if things do not go as planned. But in God consciousness, action arises not from lack, but from fullness, not from panic, but from peace, not from striving to prove oneself, but from union with the truth that is already present. This is not an abstract state. It is as real as light flooding in. When you open a window, light does not need you to believe in it, to be there. It only needs you to stop covering it. In God consciousness, you do not beg God to grant you something, because you realize that what you seek has always been within you. You no longer try to connect with divine power, for you are the very stream carrying that power into the world. In this state, gratitude is no longer an action, but a natural breath. Forgiveness is no longer an effort, but the inevitable outcome of seeing from a higher plane of love. The question is not how to reach God consciousness. The real question is, what are you willing to release so that nothing blocks it any longer? This state has never left you. You have simply layered over it too many false identities, too many fixed beliefs, too many fears learned from the world. God consciousness does not require perfection from you, nor does it demand that you become lofty. It only asks that you return to the most sacred part of yourself. That part does not call for struggle. It invites you into stillness so you can hear. It does not push you to act. It reveals to you the completeness that is here now. When you live from this state, the world around you does not need to vanish, but the way you experience it changes. Instead of reacting, you understand. Instead of feeling lost, you stand steady. Instead of searching, you express. You no longer wrestle with the world. You become a fluid current moving through it without being absorbed by it. Like the sun that shines without effort, you begin to radiate a presence that brings calm to everything around you without speaking a word. Those who live in God consciousness do not necessarily withdraw from life. They still live, work, and face challenges, but they are no longer the fearful person caught in the current. They are the one who knows they are the ocean. Everything they do carries the mark of wisdom and love, not born from willpower, but from being. They do not leave a deep impression through words, but through a quiet peace that draws others closer. When you step into this space, you need no one's approval. Your very presence is the proof. No one can take it from you, for no one gave it to you in the first place. The question is, are you ready to remember? Not to remember with the mind, but to know through direct experience, through an inner agreement, that you will no longer live as if you were a limited copy. You were born to live from the source, not to survive on fragments. You were born to express the divine, not to evade the negative. You were born not to strive to become worthy, but to discover that you have always been enough. And if you are still listening now, thank you, because only a soul that is ready remains in the silence of truths that need no decoration. What comes next will not lead you to a new place, but will help you remove the veil between you and the place you have never left. God consciousness is not far. It is waiting for you to be yourself, and that is all you truly need. The practice, transforming from a reactive person to a creative one. Reaction is the sign of a consciousness led from the outside. Everything that comes shakes it. Every word stirs emotion. Every circumstance holds the power to decide one's state of mind. This is the condition of a person who has not yet realized they are handing over their inner authority to forces beyond their control. In this state of awareness, we live as if we are products of the environment, results of the past, victims of circumstance. Yet, at a deeper level, there exists another possibility, the ability to transform from one who is acted upon into one who initiates, from reacting to creating, not through willpower, but through awakening, not through the struggle to control, but by re-establishing the seat of inner authority. Creation here does not mean making art or inventing something new. Creation is the sacred act of a consciousness no longer manipulated by external conditions. It is action born from a place deeper than fear, choice arising from a foundation steadier than fleeting emotion. A person living in the state of creation is not dragged along by what happens, but shapes their response with intention. They do not need perfect conditions to live in peace, because their peace does not come from conditions. Every circumstance is only raw material. Consciousness itself is the master artisan. When one reacts, they hand themselves over to unconscious reflex. When one creates, they reclaim the freedom that habit has stolen. They do not deny emotion, but they do not let emotion drive them. They do not resist reality, but they choose to shape the experience of reality with deep thought and deliberate action. This transformation begins with a single moment of awareness. The instant a person sees themselves reacting, and instead of continuing to be carried away, they stop. That pause alone is the first step in reclaiming spiritual authority. No longer acting from unconsciousness, they begin to live from awareness, and from there, they become the writer of life's script. This creativity does not come from the intellect, but from a deeper place, the place already connected to the infinite source of wisdom. The reactive person is preoccupied with fixing the outer display. The creative person returns to change the inner state from which all displays originate. An event holds no meaning except the meaning we give it. A word cannot wound unless the inner self receives it as an arrow. A failure cannot crush unless the inner consciousness agrees it is a limit. This is not denial of reality, but redefining one's role within it. We are not here to be defined by what has happened. We are here to remember that we hold the power to assign meaning to every experience, and from there we can be reborn, even in what seems to be the end. Those who live from creative awareness do not remove emotion, but they know how to place emotion where it belongs. They are not always calm, but when they lose their calm, they know how to return. They do not reject the dark, but they know the light is still there, waiting for them to open the door of awareness again. The beauty of this process does not lie in perfection, but in choice. Every time we choose to respond, instead of react, we strengthen the position of the soul. Every time we choose to give new meaning to an old situation, we step closer to true freedom. Do not wait for everything to change, to feel differently. Change the place from which you feel, and the world will begin to shift. Those who live from creation do not deny reality. They simply refuse to let reality limit how they live. They still act, but they act from a steady inner ground. They still face failure, but they do not allow failure to define them. They still live in the stream of life, but the stream no longer has the power to carry them away. When creation becomes the default way of living, when returning to awareness each day is no longer an effort but a reflex, then one no longer needs to control life, for they have become the source of light. There is no need to avoid the dark, no need to adjust circumstances. One need only live truly from the center of truth. Everything else aligns naturally. This path is not fast, nor is it dazzling, but it is the only path to lasting freedom. It is the way of one who is no longer a victim of circumstance, but the creator of every experience from the foundation of unity with truth. That is the true transformation. No certificate is needed, only one's own recognition. And once recognized, you will never choose to live the old way again. Not because anyone forces you, but because your soul has tasted freedom, and nothing can replace that. From positive thinking to a new reality, what truly creates change? Positive thinking is a beautiful beginning, but it is not the key that creates real transformation. It is like the faint light before dawn. It can help you see a little more clearly in the dark, but it is not enough to flood an entire life with brightness. Many people try to sustain positive thinking by repeating uplifting affirmations, yet after a time, when reality does not shift, that belief begins to crack. They start to doubt themselves, doubt the method, and eventually return to their old patterns, carrying an even deeper disappointment. The problem is not with positive thinking itself, but with stopping there. Thought is the surface, consciousness is the root. A positive thought built upon a fearful consciousness is nothing more than temporary decoration on a crumbling structure. It can create a momentary sense of hope, but it cannot sustain the deep, lasting change the soul longs for. To transform reality, we must not only change what we think, we must change the level of awareness from which thought arises. This is the point most people beginning their personal growth journey miss. They believe that if they can control their thoughts, they can control their lives. But thought is not the central command. Thought is an echo from a deeper field of consciousness. One can have hundreds of thoughts in an hour, yet a single underlying state of awareness determines their tone, direction, and energy. If the foundation is fear, then even thoughts of the future are simply preparation for defense. If the foundation is lack, then even thoughts of success carry the vibration of not enough. Therefore, rather than trying to change each individual thought, what is needed is to change the entire inner structure that is producing those thoughts. It is not about replacing each drop of water in the river. It is about changing the source from which the river flows. Once the source changes, the whole current naturally shifts. Consciousness is the source, and when consciousness changes, every thought, emotion, action, and even circumstance will restructure themselves to match the new frequency. This is not positive thinking as a theory. This is a spiritual law. Consciousness is cause. Life is effect. Without exception, how then can you know which level of consciousness you are operating from? Observe your prevailing emotion when nothing in particular is happening. That is your true baseline. If peace is your default, you are living from unified consciousness. If worry is your default, you are living from separated consciousness. And this is the real force, shaping the circumstances that return to you when you find you must think positively to counteract a negative feeling. It is that feeling, not the thought, that reveals the truth running your life. In such moments, positivity is only a cloak. It can make a beautiful impression outwardly, but it does not have the power to change the essence of your life. To create real change, you must step into the place beneath emotion, the place where only one question matters: what am I believing? Every consciousness is fed by a core belief. If the belief is that the world is dangerous, then every thought, no matter how inspiring, will be bent towards self-protection. If the belief is that life supports and upholds you, then even in silence, without a single thought, the energy you radiate will be steady and gentle. True change does not come from repeating a positive affirmation 100 times. It comes from looking directly at the underlying belief, dismantling it, and choosing a deeper truth. This does not require years. It requires a single moment of honesty. Honesty with yourself. Honesty about what you are believing, holding and protecting beneath all the beautiful words. When that honesty arises, everything begins to shift. Light does not need to fight the dark. It only needs to be lit. A person does not need to think positively to avoid the negative. They only need to step into truth. And from that place, every thought is reborn, not as an ornament or an effort, but as the natural flow of a consciousness that has been realigned. A new reality is not created by words. It is shaped by the quality of presence. And when presence changes, everything around it has no reason to resist. Life does not respond to what we say. It mirrors what we are. So rather than trying to think differently, live differently, not with hurried action, but by choosing a different level of consciousness to dwell in. Then, like a seed meeting the right season, everything will change. No effort is needed, only alignment. No decoration is needed, only truth. No forced positivity is needed, only presence anchored in the deepest part of yourself. And it is precisely there that miracles begin, levels of consciousness and the law of resonance. Consciousness is not a single, uniform block. It has layers, frequencies, and its own degrees of refinement. Each level of consciousness is like a broadcasting station with a specific frequency. From there, it attracts and communicates only with what resonates on the same wavelength. This is the essence of the law of resonance. No one can receive the signal of higher realms while still transmitting from lower ones. Life does not respond to what you say. It answers to the frequency you are. It is neither luck nor coincidence that places someone in a particular situation. It is their level of consciousness broadcasting the signal that draws that situation in. Those who live in a state of fear will repeatedly encounter circumstances that make that fear feel real. This is not because life is unjust, but because the law of resonance always works with precision, like a musical instrument tuned to a certain key. It can only harmonize with sounds of the same pitch. Likewise, if a person's consciousness is rooted in a sense of lack, they cannot sustain lasting abundance, even if they suddenly receive great wealth. If their consciousness rests on doubt, they will always find reasons not to believe, even when faced with a miracle. The law of resonance operates not on desire, but on the actual state of the mind and heart. A person may pray for peace, but if their inner world is full of resentment and doubt, the vibration they are sending out is instability, and that vibration will draw in more experiences that match it. This is not punishment. It is the natural feedback mechanism of the universe. It is perfectly honest. And because it is honest, it is one of the greatest teachers. There is no need to guess which level of consciousness you are in. Simply look at the quality of the life you are living. It is a direct reflection of your inner vibration. If pain repeats itself, it signals a level of consciousness broadcasting a matching frequency. If peace and clarity repeat, it is the sign of a consciousness that has moved beyond the outer coverings and touched the true foundation. Levels of consciousness operate like layers of clouds. The lower layers are dense, heavy, filled with darkness, doubt, blame, and control. In the middle layers, there is hope, a search for truth, and an awakening to inner causes, but still much effort, desire, and the need to prove oneself. The highest layer is where stillness reigns. There is no need to prove, no urge to possess. What comes is not clung to, what goes is not mourned. At this level, one need not speak much. Their very presence soothes the space around them. That presence is the highest vibration. And because of that, it draws in the most fitting experiences without seeking them. Movement between levels of consciousness does not happen through reasoning. It happens through surrendering old patterns, releasing beliefs that no longer serve, and consistently choosing what is deeper, even when it cannot yet be named. The law of resonance cannot be manipulated, but it can be cooperated with. When you elevate your inner state, the outer world must reorganize itself accordingly. There is no need to force, no need to rush, only to walk steadily in alignment between thought, feeling, and action. When this happens, new people will appear, new doors will open, not because you chase them, but because you have become the vibration that matches them. In the universe, everything is frequency. Every thought is a wave. Every emotion is a field of vibration. Each person lives as a transmitter, sending out energy and receiving precisely what they send, no more, no less. And because of this perfect fairness, no one can be left behind. No one can be cut off from the flow of grace. Adjust the frequency, and the flow will find you. The wonder is that you do not need to go anywhere to find it. You need only return inward, to the place where every frequency can be chosen anew. Consciousness is the dial. The law of resonance is the current. When you set the dial correctly, everything runs smoothly. When you try to control the outer world while neglecting the quality of your inner vibration, things will feel out of sync, not because you are wrong, but because you are trying to tune into a station your signal does not match. Stop, observe, adjust. Let the new vibration send a different invitation to the universe. You do not need to persuade the world. You need only become the person who matches the world you wish to live in. The law of resonance will handle the rest. The 5 foundational principles of God. Consciousness. God consciousness is not a passing inspiration or a rare state reserved for the devout. It is the original operating structure of the soul, the place where all life begins and ends. To live from this state consistently, one must ground themselves upon 5 immutable principles. These are not 5 technical steps, but 5 pillars that uphold the awakening mind. When these principles are truly lived, not only does thought transform, but the entire field of one's energy begins to resonate with the universe in a wholly new way. And it is this resonance that draws results, not through effort, but through presence. This is the power of the voice within, not merely a sound you hear, but a space to which you return. First principle, all is one. There is no separation between the soul and God, no distance between humanity and the universe, no two opposing entities struggling to connect. There is only one current of life flowing through all forms. All experiences, all existence. When you understand this, you no longer feel alone in the world. Everything you encounter ceases to be out there and becomes a reflection of the deepest layers of your own awareness seeking to be recognized and healed. When someone acts with cruelty, you are no longer triggered by fear, but you see the voice of unconsciousness speaking. When life places you in a challenging situation, you no longer react as a victim, but observe it as part of the journey back to unity. Second principle, consciousness is cause, the world is effect. Everything appearing in your life is the result of a state of awareness that has broadcast a signal long enough to take form. No one is a true victim. No circumstance is random. When you shift the level of consciousness you are operating from, reality restructures itself. You do not need to control the outer world, only to adjust the inner. Just as changing the light in a room transforms the appearance of every object, you need not rearrange the furniture. You only need to change the source of illumination. And that single change alters the entire experience without touching anything else. Third principle, what you hold within manifests without. Every thought, emotion, and belief, if nurtured long enough in the space of consciousness, will take form in the physical world. There are no exceptions. There is no hiding. No one is outside the law. If you hold an image of lack, you will continually live in patterns that make that belief seem true. If you cultivate fullness and gratitude, you will find yourself supported even in the hardest circumstances. For it is not the circumstance that creates the feeling. It is the feeling that shapes the way you meet the circumstance. And thus, what you hold within will manifest without sooner or later, near or far. Fourth principle, stillness is the language of God. In a world full of noise, where everyone competes to speak and to prove themselves, stillness is the most powerful foundation for connecting with God. Consciousness in stillness. Disturbances fall away in stillness. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. Only presence is required. This is not mere physical silence, but an inner state, free from reaction and untouched by the chatter of the unconscious mind. Here, the voice within speaks, not in words, but in a deep knowing beyond all description. And in that space, you are no longer seeking the light. You are the light. Fifth principle, choice is the supreme power. No one can take from you the power to choose how you respond, how you live, and how you move forward. Even in the most restricted circumstance, you can choose the level of consciousness in which you dwell. You can choose to react, or you can choose peace. You can choose doubt, or you can choose trust. You can choose to live as a victim, or to live as one expressing God in everyday life. Power is not in controlling the outer world, but in the inner choice made in each moment, and it is the accumulation of these choices that builds an energy field so strong the world cannot help but respond. These 5 principles are not meant to be memorized, they are meant to be lived. Each is an invitation to return to the soul's original structure, not to become something lofty, but to return to what has always been true. You do not need to strive to be better. You need only pause long enough to see that you have always been whole, always carried the full divine design within you. When these 5 principles are lived naturally, not through effort, but through deep inner agreement, God consciousness ceases to be a concept. It becomes a living experience. It becomes the heartbeat. It becomes the air. It becomes the true home. And each time you return to these principles, the voice within awakens, not with sound, but with a wordless space. You need no one's approval. You need only to return. And there, everything begins again, not as a new beginning, but as a long-delayed homecoming, spiritual treatment, a systematic method for changing consciousness. Spiritual treatment is not a mysterious spiritual ritual, nor is it a set prayer designed to ask for something from a power outside yourself. It is a systematic, precise, and scientific process aimed at readjusting the level of consciousness to establish harmony between the individual and God. Consciousness, all lasting change begins not with action, but with awareness, and spiritual treatment is the tool that brings awareness back to its source, a place with no limitation, no separation, and none of the chaotic voices of the fearful ego. It is the art of healing through truth, requiring no external intervention, no advanced intellectual knowledge, only a sincere willingness to turn toward the higher dimension within. The process of spiritual treatment has several steps, yet it is not complicated. Each step is a rung of a ladder that gradually moves the unsettled mind into a higher clarity. Step 1, recognition. Recognize that there is only one life, one power, one source, and that is God. Not God confined to a religious image, but the living, intelligent, loving presence that governs the entire universe. As long as the mind is divided between God and the world, between the sacred and the secular, unity cannot occur. This recognition is not a theoretical belief, but a deep absorption in the reality that there is only one, and from that one, all things are formed. Step 2, unification. Understand that this divine life is not outside of you, but is present within you. You are not a small, separate being trying to connect with God. You are an inseparable expression of God manifesting in this form. This means that all the attributes of God, wisdom, love, power, are already within you, not to be attained, but to be recognized. When this unification becomes alive in you, you shift from a posture of pleading to one of declaring. You no longer beg a distant power. You affirm the divine truth that is already present. Step 3, affirmation. From this renewed foundation of awareness, you begin to declare what is true from the perspective of God. Consciousness, for example, when facing illness, you do not affirm healing from fear, but you declare that wholeness is already at work within the body. Not to force reality to change, but to align your consciousness with truth. When facing financial difficulty, you do not affirm abundance from lack, but you affirm that the inexhaustible flow of the universe is continuously operating in your life. These affirmations have no power if merely repeated like formulas. They are effective only when they arise from a consciousness already set in truth. Then every word becomes a wave of energy, and each wave resonates with a corresponding field in the unseen. Step 4, gratitude. You give thanks not because something will come, but because you know it is already real in the deeper dimension of existence. Gratitude is the signature of unified consciousness. Where there is worry, there is still doubt. Where there is knowing, there is only gratitude. This gratitude is not a reaction to an outcome, but the confirmation of one who has seen the fulfillment within. From this inner gratitude, Things begin to appear outwardly as natural manifestations, without strain or force. Step 5, release. After recognizing, unifying, affirming, and giving thanks, the practitioner does not cling to what has been declared. They release it like a seed planted in the soil, not digging it up to check, not forcing it to sprout on schedule. They know the work has been completed in the invisible, and the rest belongs to the law of the universe. Release is not abandonment. It is the mark of deep trust, trust in the law, in life, in the power of the adjusted consciousness. Spiritual treatment requires no elaborate ritual. It can be done in minutes, yet its impact reaches the very roots. Those who know how to use it do not chase appearances. They reset the cause. They do not try to fix life. They heal the consciousness producing life. And when consciousness is healed, truth appears, not according to personal timing, but according to the perfect order of universal wisdom. This is not a method to change the world, to fit your will, but a means of returning to a world that has always been perfect when seen from the right level of awareness. It is the way of simplicity, clarity, and effectiveness, not because it is mystical, but because it is whole, not because it creates something new, but because it helps you remember what has always been. And when that is lived, nothing is impossible. 5 common mistakes when practicing consciousness adjustment. Not everyone who practices adjusting their consciousness experiences real change. Many begin with excitement, reading the right books, speaking the right words, following the right methods, yet after a long period, they see no transformation. This is not because they lack ability or discipline, but because they have unconsciously fallen into one of 5 common mistakes on this path. These errors do not occur at the surface level, but at the root, where the ego skillfully disguises itself in what seems right. Mistake 1, trying to adjust consciousness from a state of fear. If someone begins their practice with the worry that unless they change, they will continue to suffer, the entire energetic foundation is already misaligned. Consciousness adjustment cannot succeed if it is built upon fear or avoidance. Fear is a low vibration, and any action taken from that level, no matter how positive it appears, still carries the same incompatible frequency. This is like planting a good seed in poisoned soil. The seed is fine, but the environment cannot support its growth. The solution is not to try harder, but to shift the inner motive from fear to free choice. When you practice, not because you fear a negative outcome, but because you feel truth calling you, transformation begins from the deepest layer. Mistake 2, using the method like a magic spell instead of an inner reset. Many read a formula, a set of affirmations, and think that by repeating them enough times, their life will change. They turn awakening into a mystical ritual, forgetting that the power lies not in the words themselves, but in the consciousness from which those words are spoken. If separation is still believed in, if the victim identity is still clung to, then no matter how many times you say, I am strong, I am worthy, I am complete, it is nothing but an empty echo. The method is only a tool. Consciousness is the operator, and no tool is strong enough to override a consciousness broadcasting on the wrong frequency. So instead of asking, how many times have I said this? Ask, what state was I in when I said it? That state determines everything. Mistake 3, confusing theory with experience. Some understand spiritual laws well, able to explain consciousness, the law of attraction, the law of resonance, even teach others about them, yet have never truly lived from the state of unity with those truths. Knowledge does not change life, lived experience does, if what you know has not become your character. your reflex, when no one is watching, your foundation when everything collapses, then it is only borrowed knowledge. True change needs no persuasion. It shows in your silence, in how you walk, in how you choose forgiveness, in how you still see light in the dark. When theory becomes lived practice, the miraculous unfolds naturally. Mistake 4, losing patience with the process. Some practice for a few days or weeks, then begin doubting, comparing, growing, restless and disappointed. They expect consciousness adjustment to be instant, like flipping a switch. In truth, it is the restructuring of an entire system of beliefs, emotions, and unconscious reactions, things formed and reinforced over years, perhaps lifetimes. Patience here is not passive waiting. It is living as if what you have affirmed is already true. Even when the outer world has not yet shifted, this is the highest act of faith, and it is patience that allows the seed enough time to sprout. No one plants a tree today and demands fruit tomorrow, yet many plant a spiritual affirmation in the morning and doubt it by the afternoon. That is how the cycle is broken before it completes. Remember, the process never fails. Only impatience interrupts it. Mistake 5, separating practice from everyday life. Some meditate, affirm, and keep a spiritual journal with great discipline, yet once they step outside that space, they live as before, reacting to situations from habit, acting from fear, speaking as if they had never practiced at all. They think practice happens only in moments of stillness, but true practice is when you are in traffic, when you face someone who hurt you, when you wait without seeing results, when you do not know what comes next. If consciousness adjustment does not show in your daily behavior and reactions, it has not truly occurred. Every moment of life is an opportunity to practice. You do not need more time, you need more presence. Avoiding these 5 mistakes does not require perfection, only honesty. When you look at each point directly and gently, make adjustments through awareness, even a small step can open a great door. Consciousness does not require you to be grand or lofty. It only asks that you live truthfully from your deepest place. When that happens, adjustment is no longer effort. It is a natural reflex. You do not need to become a different version of yourself. You simply remove what was never truly you. From there, real change begins. Maintaining a high state of consciousness in daily life. Maintaining a high level of consciousness is not difficult, but it does require consistency. Many people can touch a state of oneness when meditating, listening to a profound teaching, standing before nature, or in some sacred moment, yet just hours later, when they return to the pace of daily life, they find themselves reacting in the old ways, falling into worry, criticism, complaint, or fatigue. The real question is not how to reach a higher state of consciousness, but how to remain there. True awakening is not found in a fleeting moment of inspiration, but in the repeated choice you make each day. Daily life is the most sacred place to practice. You do not need to withdraw from the world, climb a mountain, enter a monastery, or step away from relationships and responsibilities. It is in the small moments of everyday living that consciousness is sharpened, strengthened, and established. Every action, no matter how small, is an opportunity to choose again the level of consciousness you are living from. The secret to sustaining God consciousness in life is to not let life make you forget your true nature. Each morning, instead of rushing into your to-do list, we begin with a moment of stillness. It doesn't need to be long or ceremonial, just a pause to remind yourself that you are not this body, not the roles you play, not the person handling life's problems. You are the embodiment of God, consciousness in human form. And today, you do not live only for yourself, but to let that infinite light express through your words, actions, and decisions throughout the day. What matters most is not what you do, but the state from which you do it. When you wash dishes with full presence, you are maintaining high consciousness. When you listen to someone without reacting, you strengthen the vibration of love. When you delay a quick, defensive response and replace it with a more understanding perspective, you anchor yourself deeper into awareness. Every action is a declaration of the state you choose to live from, and the beauty is you can choose again at any moment. If you notice yourself being pulled down by a negative story, pause it, turn inward, and ask, which level of consciousness is directing me right now? Asterisk. There's no need to judge or criticize yourself. Simply see it. And then choose again. Realizing you've gone off course is not failure. It's the sign of a consciousness waking up. Maintaining high consciousness does not mean you never feel sad, never get angry, or never face hardship. It means you do not allow those emotions or situations to take the driver's seat. You can observe without being swept away. You can acknowledge an emotion without identifying with it. You can walk through storms while keeping the stillness of the inner lake. This is the true strength of one who lives from God, the consciousness, not that life is always smooth, but that the inner being remains steady. And from that steadiness, the outer world begins to arrange itself to mirror the harmony within. One powerful way to maintain high consciousness is to bring the spirit of prayer into everything you do, not through words, but through attitude. Do everything as an act of service, not for praise, not to prove yourself, but as one expressing the divine through ordinary actions. Fold a blanket with as much respect as you would bring to meditation. Cook a meal with the same love as if you were feeding the Creator in the form of your family. Write an email as if you were writing to the soul behind the name. Small acts, when done from a high state of consciousness, accumulate into a vibration so strong it cannot be shaken by the world. Learn to return inward before reacting outward. In moments of conflict, instead of replying immediately, pause. 1 second of stillness before speaking can save you from a long trail of regret. One deep breath can shift you from unconsciousness to awareness. One silent reminder that nothing is happening to you, but for your growth can turn a storm into an opportunity. Maintaining high consciousness also demands great honesty. Honesty with yourself about how you truly feel, about what you are avoiding, about the limiting beliefs still operating unconsciously. Awakening does not come from pretending to be positive, but from facing everything within you without flinching, when you see without turning away, when you accept without judgment. That very seeing becomes the light that heals. You don't have to fix everything instantly, only be present enough to no longer be ruled by it. High consciousness is not a far-off state. It is a choice available in every moment. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to remember what you already are and live from that place. Step by step, act by act, breath by breath. When this becomes reflex rather than effort, you will no longer have to maintain the high state. The high state will maintain you, and life will no longer be something to manage or solve, but the very space where the divine expresses itself through you, transforming negative thought patterns. Negative thinking is not a flaw. It is a habit. It is the product of years spent living in a level of consciousness distorted by fear, shame, and false beliefs. These patterns are like background music playing silently in the mind, looping so often that you no longer notice the individual notes. Yet still moved by its rhythm, they shape how you see events, how you react, and how you treat yourself, and from these thoughts, reality takes form, for consciousness is cause and life is effect. You cannot change circumstances without changing the level of consciousness that created them. You cannot have a new future with an old mind. Transforming negative thought patterns cannot be done by fighting them. The more you resist, the stronger they become. The harder you try to push them away, the more they push back. Anything you fight will persist as part of you. The solution is not to defeat the dark, but to open the door to light. A negative thought pattern is simply a limited belief that has not yet been seen in the light of awareness. When you stop and observe it, without judgment, you are bringing light to what was hidden, and this presence begins the process of transformation, not through forced effort, but through gentle, profound awareness. Imagine someone who has lived for years believing they are not good enough. From this belief, they approach opportunities with fear of rejection. They avoid relationships for fear of being hurt. They work hard not out of love for their craft, but to prove their worth. They are exhausted without knowing why. Every thought, feeling, and choice is steered by an invisible underlying pattern. You cannot simply tell them to think positively and expect change. What is needed is to recognize the belief's presence, face it, and then infuse it with a greater truth. For example, instead of repeating, "I am worthy," like a slogan, they might place a hand over their center of being and silently say, "I have always been an inseparable part of life itself. Nothing to prove, no standard to meet, only to be." Oh, the process of transformation does not require replacing every negative thought with a positive one that only creates another mask. What's needed is to return to the voice within, the place where every fearful voice dissolves in the clarity of stillness. This is the power of the voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, a space that needs no reason to love, no condition to accept. Here, every negative pattern loses its grip. They are not pushed away, they are understood, seen, and then dissolve like fog in sunlight. When a thought arises, "I will fail," "I'm not good enough," "No one truly loves me," do not rush to correct it. Pause and ask, who is saying this? What part of me believes it? Where did this belief come from? Is it the ultimate truth? Asterisk. In that moment, you are not arguing with the thought. You are opening a door out of the maze. Every negative thought pattern has roots in the past. It is not who you truly are, only a trace of unhealed experiences. When you bring full presence to it, the old cannot rule the new. A key tool in this process is transforming the mind's content through uplifting imagery, not fantasies, but deep symbols that remind you of your sacred nature. Spend a few minutes each day picturing yourself walking with steadiness, speaking with clarity, living from the quiet center within. No need to imagine every detail, only to feel the vibration that image carries. With regular practice, the old patterns will no longer feel at home. The mind will naturally choose higher consciousness as its new default. This process does not happen in one sitting. It requires patience, gentleness, and honesty. Not every day will feel successful, and that's fine. What matters is direction. Every time you choose to return to truth, instead of reacting from the old, you are building new neural pathways, a new vibration, a new reality. From there, transformation stops being something you strive for and becomes something that unfolds through you. When negative patterns no longer control you, you do not become someone else. You return to yourself. Nothing needs to be added. Only what does not belong needs to be removed. And when that happens, you see that every story you ever believed about your limits was only dust on the mirror of the soul. When the dust is cleared, You do not just see yourself more clearly, you see God through yourself. From there, you no longer need to try to think the right thoughts, for the right level of consciousness has become your home, a place you can always return to, a wordless space, an unshakable presence, and that is the power of the voice within. 5. Practical techniques for changing thought patterns. To change a thought pattern that has been deeply wired into both your nervous system and your energy, you need more than clear awareness. You need consistent, intentional practice. Consciousness does not transform without training, and old thoughts do not disappear on their own unless they are replaced by a new flow arising from a higher level of awareness. There are 5 simple yet profound techniques that will help you do this systematically. These require no withdrawal from the world, no creation of a separate sacred space, only your awakened presence in each moment. Technique 1. Change the question. Every negative thought begins with the wrong question. For example, why do I always fail? Asterisk. Why doesn't anyone love me? Asterisk. Asterisk. What's wrong with me? Asterisk. Such questions unconsciously assume that you are already wrong, lacking, or not enough. The mind will always look for an answer to the question it is given. Ask a negative question, and it will dig through old wounds to respond. The first step, then, is to change the question. Instead of, why am I like this? Asterisk, ask. What is seeking to be seen in this situation? Asterisk. Instead of, why don't I have what I want? Asterisk, ask. What am I being invited to return to within myself? Asterisk. The right quality of question opens the right space where truth can be revealed without force. Each day, train your mind to ask open, constructive questions from a place of presence and self-respect. When you ask from light, the answer will not come from the dark. Technique 2, rewrite the mental script. Within each person runs an invisible film, playing the same old story over and over. It might be, I always get left behind. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm not good enough. Asterisk, I have to work hard to be loved. Asterisk, asterisk, I'm not allowed to make mistakes. Asterisk. Take time to write down that story exactly as it lives inside you, not to reinforce it, but to see it clearly. Then rewrite a new version from the perspective of one living in God consciousness. The new story does not deny the pain, but gives it a new meaning and release. Write as if you are creating a new neural pathway in your mind, where the old is gently let go and loses its control over you. Each rewrite is a choice for truth over illusion. And when truth is chosen long enough, it becomes natural. Technique 3. Practice the pause between reactions. Most negative thought patterns arise in automatic mode. Something happens, and you react in the old way without noticing. Reaction is the fastest route back to the old level of consciousness. To break this, create a pause. Just one breath, one glance, one whispered reminder, I do not have to react the old way. I can choose differently. Asterisk. That pause is the doorway. Step through it, and a new space opens where you are no longer the product of circumstance, but the true creator. This is one of the most powerful practices because it happens in real life, in real challenges, where choice truly creates transformation. Technique 4. Speak affirmations from a centered inner space. Many confuse affirmations with simply repeating words, but if the mind is still chaotic and the heart is closed, affirmations are just empty sound. Begin by centering yourself in the breath, touching the quiet center of your being. When you feel the stillness there, let your affirmation arise as a gentle wave moving through you. I am the fullness of life. I am limitless light. I am inseparable from divine wisdom. Asterisk. There is no need to force belief. Simply let the vibration of that truth sink in. When you speak from a place of knowing rather than doubt, the universe responds to that frequency. At that point, your words are not just tools, they are acts of creation. Technique 5. Observe and forgive. A negative thought pattern cannot last when it is observed with compassion. Instead of trying to remove it, learn to look at it directly and forgive yourself for having believed something untrue. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the highest act of inner authority. When you forgive yourself, you reclaim the energy that has been locked in old structures. Forgiveness is like letting the river flow again. You don't need to swim upstream or force yourself across. You simply let it move on. While you stand on the shore, no longer identified with the past. These 5 techniques are not formulas to memorize, but choices to make daily as a way of living. Practice from awareness. They open new pathways in your mind, emotions, and energy. Each practice is a move from the old level of consciousness into a wider, higher space. And in that space, negative thought patterns no longer control you. You become the observer, the chooser, and the creator. Everything you once wanted no longer comes from striving, but from the state of being that has been freed. That is how you turn awareness into reality, and that is the true power of a soul that has remembered who it is. Healing through sacred awareness. Have you ever wondered if there is something in your life that remains unhealed simply because it has never truly been seen through the eyes of awakening? Not for lack of effort, not for lack of trying, but because you have continued to see your pain as something to be eliminated, rather than as a doorway back to yourself. If you are here, listening to this point, perhaps deep within you there is an invitation, not one born of intellect or surface-level treatments, but one arising from a sacred depth inside you, where truth has never left. And because you are here, I thank you, not because you are learning something new, but because you are ready to remember what you have always known. True healing does not begin with outer action, but with a profound shift in how we perceive ourselves and the world. Many seek healing through medicine, advice, or modern technique. While all of these may be helpful to some degree, if they do not touch the deepest level of awareness, the root remains, and the pain will return in another form. Illness is not the enemy. It is a message. It does not arrive to destroy you, but to tell you something inside has wandered from truth. Real healing is not about restoring the body to its old state, but about restoring consciousness to its unity with God. From that place, the body knows what to do. Sacred awareness is not the same as positive thinking. It does not deny the dark, nor pretend that everything is fine. It looks directly at every state with deep presence and unconditional compassion. When you look at your pain without trying to remove it, when you sit with your sorrow without wishing it away, when you touch a painful memory without judgment or escape, you are bringing sacred light into the very place where darkness once ruled. And it is that light that is the true medicine. Imagine carrying an ember of anger for many years. You may have learned to control it, to try forgiveness, to attempt understanding of the one who hurt you. Yet every time the memory returns, the same emotions rise, and you find yourself back in the old cycle. In the old awareness, you think you must let go. In sacred awareness, you see, it is not about letting go, but about returning to the place where the part of you that was wounded is still waiting to be embraced, returning to where anger is no longer a problem, but a signpost, returning to where you do not need to fix yourself, only to remember you have never been separate from love. In the deep silence of God consciousness, there is no right or wrong, no good or bad, no healed or unhealed. only one stream of life flowing through all things, including pain. When you sit in that space, there is nothing to do. You simply are. That presence is the prayer. That presence is the water that cools the fever. That presence is the first breath of a new life rising from within. And when you live from that place, you no longer see illness as an enemy, you see it as a call to come home. Sacred awareness also invites you to be a healer, not just for yourself, but for everyone you meet, not by preaching or telling them how to live, but by the vibration of stillness you carry, a gaze without judgment, a word spoken from the center of clarity, a silence filled with compassion. These are acts of healing more powerful than any remedy, for true energy does not argue, it resonates, it stirs, it reminds, it does not force change, for your presence itself becomes the reminder that they, too, have always been whole. No one else can heal you, and you do not need to heal anyone else. The only invitation is to return to your original state, untouched by labels, unbound by the past, unmoved by emotion. In that state, you do not need healing. You are the healing. No more searching for solutions. No more analyzing causes. No more striving to change anything. Only living as if you have always been whole. And when you live that way, everything unhealed begins to restore itself. Not because of what you do, but because your presence has shifted the vibration of all that surrounds you. So if there is something within you still waiting to be healed, do not search for a method. Go inward. Touch the place that has been forgotten and ask, what is longing to be seen in the light of truth? Asterisk. Sit with that question as a wordless prayer. And one day, in the stillness, you will hear something you have never heard before, not with your ears, but with the whole of life resonating within you, and you will realize it is not a voice trying to guide you, but a space calling you home. The power of the voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, and there, in that space, everything you have ever sought is given back to you in silence, applying the healing process to the field of health. Health is not merely the absence of disease in the physical body. It is the harmony between body, mind, and consciousness. The body does not act independently of the spirit. It is a living map, reflecting the state of the inner being. Every illness begins as a vibration that has shifted out of divine order, and because the cause does not originate in matter, the correction must take place at the level of consciousness. This is where the process of spiritual treatment becomes an essential tool, not only to improve health, but to restore complete order within both the biological system and the belief system. From the perspective of God consciousness, illness is not the enemy. It is a signal, not to warn of the body's malfunction, but to indicate that a level of consciousness within is in need of alignment. When a person lives constantly in worry, anger, or guilt, the body is compelled to reflect that state. The immune system weakens, not because of outer circumstances, but because of the withdrawal of life energy from within. Physical symptoms are not merely biological malfunctions. They are the accumulation of unresolved emotional patterns, uncorrected false beliefs, and wounds that have not yet been embraced in stillness. The first step in the healing process is to re-establish your awareness of the body's sacred nature. The body is not a machine to be repaired. It is a divine instrument designed to serve life, to resonate with truth, and to receive guidance from spirit. When you regard the body as the temple of the soul, you no longer impose fear, resentment, or control upon it. Instead, you begin to converse with it from gratitude and reverence. In the state of God consciousness, you do not demand that the body be healthy. You help it. Remember that it was born from light and carries within it the perfect mechanism for self-restoration. The healing process does not begin with fighting symptoms, but with placing yourself in a heightened state of awareness. Each morning, set aside a period of silence, not to plead for health, but to unite with the deepest vibration within you. Let every cell be immersed in the awareness that you are connected to absolute intelligence. You need not visualize anything specific. Simply know that every breath is a current of healing energy flowing through you. You do not need to force change. You only need to allow truth to be restored. Once this sacred awareness is established, you begin to speak healing declarations as an act of co-creation, not as mechanical affirmations, but as words born from a true union between the soul and God. For example, I am not this illness. I am the perfect expression of life. Every cell in me knows how to return to divine order. The light of God is flowing through my nervous system, my immune system, and my entire being. Asterisk. Every statement must be spoken from the place that already knows truth, not from the place still struggling to believe. When this happens, words are no longer mere sounds. They become waves of energy that dismantle old structures and establish a new order. The next crucial step is to live as though the healing has already occurred. Many pray or declare and then return to thinking, speaking, and acting as before. They hold on to worry and continue to reinforce the old vibration they sought to release. But when a declaration is made from the state of God, consciousness, you must walk as though it is already done. Your actions, emotions, and energy must correspond to what you have proclaimed. When you eat, eat as one nourishing a healthy body. When you rest, rest as one whose body is already and continually restoring itself. When you think, we think as one who is no longer ill, but is living from wholeness. During this process, you may discover unconscious beliefs still present, fears of relapse, identification with the victim role, feelings of guilt, yet unresolved. Do not suppress them. Observe them and bring them into the space of awareness. Each time a negative emotion rises, quietly say, I see you. You are not rejected, but you no longer direct me. In doing so, you gently dissolve layers of old energy, untying knots in your vibrational structure. True healing begins here, without fanfare, without drama, just a silent movement toward the light. Finally, remember that you do not heal for yourself alone. When you raise your vibration and re-establish the sacred state in your body, you contribute to the expansion of the collective frequency of humanity. Every healed person is a point of light in the shared energy field. Each time you refuse to follow fear and choose to return to truth, you create a wave of resonance that makes it easier for others to enter their own journey. Healing is no longer a private matter. It is a sacred act of a soul that has remembered its deepest purpose. Thus, the healing process in the realm of health is no longer a battle with illness, but a journey back to original order. It is no longer an effort to control the body, but a union with the divine intelligence operating in every cell. It is no longer a chase for results, but a full presence with what is. And from that state, life adjusts itself in ways you do not need to understand, only to trust and to live as though it has always been so. Prosperity thinking, the unlimited source. Prosperity does not come from the outside. It springs from a deep inner awareness that supply is infinite and that you have always been connected to that divine flow. Prosperity thinking is not the illusion that everything will arrive effortlessly. It is the recognition that you are not bound by circumstances, markets, or the past. You are limited only by your own consciousness. When you believe the world is a finite pie, where someone else having more means you must have less, you have already entered the vibration of lack. But when you live in God consciousness, You know the universe does not operate by the logic of competition, but by the principle of expansion. Supply is not depleted when shared, it is activated when you allow it to flow through you. All forms of poverty, in any guise, originate from a pattern of consciousness. You may have heard that to be wealthy you must think positively, yet if you try to layer positive thoughts on top of an old vibration of fear, you are only applying a fresh coat of paint over a crumbling wall. True prosperity thinking does not arise from wanting more money. It comes from no longer identifying with the fear of not enough. It is when you stop viewing life through the lens of survival and start seeing through the eyes of presence, then you no longer work to survive, but to harmonize. You no longer earn to prove your worth, but to express the infinite supply moving through you. To live in the consciousness of prosperity, the first step is to redefine wealth. Wealth does not mean having great possessions. It means no longer being bound by the fear of loss. The truly wealthy are those who know they can give without becoming less. They may lose a form, but they can never lose the source. When you understand that you are not the accumulator, but the channel, you no longer fear what comes and goes. You know that the flow is never interrupted by the numbers in a bank account, but by the state of your consciousness about yourself. Consider a person living in a consciousness of limitation. Every thought of money brings tension. Every act of spending stirs fear. Each time they see another's success, they feel smaller. Their decisions are driven by the urge to protect what they think is scarce, rather than to trust in what is coming. They live not from truth, but from memories of lack. In contrast, one who lives in prosperity thinking may have less money at the moment, yet they move through life with gratitude, peace, and inner freedom. They know that money is not the cause of freedom, but the result of union with the universal flow. Prosperity thinking does not deny material reality, but it is not confined by it. When you practice living in the awareness that supply is infinite, you no longer need to chase. You attract. You do not manipulate. You resonate. Every action, no matter how small, becomes an unspoken declaration that you trust in abundance, and the universe, in perfect reflection, affirms that trust by sending opportunities, people, and divine coincidences at exactly the right time, in exactly the right way. One of the most powerful practices for cultivating prosperity thinking is active gratitude, not only for what you have, but for what is on its way. Each morning, take time to thank the flow of money moving through you. Even if you cannot yet see it with the physical eye, thank the divine intelligence guiding you to the right resources. Thank the privilege of being chosen as a channel for infinite supply. When you do this, you cease living in waiting and begin living in affirmation. And affirmation is the most potent summons there is. Prosperity thinking also calls you to release false beliefs about money and self-worth, that you must toil endlessly to deserve it, that wealth is corrupt, that you must sacrifice so others can have enough. Such beliefs are echoes of a fearful consciousness. As long as you carry them, you limit your capacity to receive, but when you let them go and replace them with the awareness that you are a child of life, born not for lack but to express abundance, all limits begin to dissolve. Ultimately, prosperity does not come because you declare you deserve it. It comes when you live as though you have always had it. When you eat with gratitude, when you give without calculation, when you invest in your own growth without fear of depletion, when you rest without guilt, when you see every circumstance as an opportunity to expand, not to defend, this is when you live from the divine center. And in that place, supply never runs dry. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, and from that space, You do not need to become wealthy. You only need to be present, and everything necessary will arrive at the right time, in the right measure, in perfect alignment with the consciousness you carry, techniques and principles for activating prosperity thinking. Prosperity thinking is not an abstract concept or a fleeting emotional state that changes with circumstances. It is a level of awareness that can be activated and sustained through specific techniques and solid principles. When you understand how prosperity thinking works, you stop chasing wealth as something beyond your reach and begin living as if you are walking hand in hand with abundance in every breath. Prosperity does not come because you pursue it, but because you allow it to reveal itself through you. The first principle for activating prosperity thinking is to understand that you do not need to earn prosperity, you need to remember it. Prosperity is not a reward for those who work the hardest. It is the natural power of every soul that lives in union with its source. If you believe you must do something extraordinary to deserve abundance, you have unconsciously denied the supply that is already present within you. Activating prosperity thinking does not begin with action. It begins with a shift in how you define yourself, from one who strives to obtain to one who allows expression. One effective practice is to align your inner language with the vibration of prosperity. Observe how you speak about money, opportunity, and value every time you say, "I can't," "I don't have enough," or "I'm afraid to lose." You reinforce a signal that is out of harmony with the divine flow of supply. Instead, train your mind to release statements that reflect trust and openness. For example, "I live in the flow of abundance. Everything I need always finds me at the right time. I am a trustworthy channel for prosperity to be expressed." When your inner language changes, you adjust your energetic signal, and the universe will respond accordingly to that frequency. The second principle is to act from awareness rather than reaction. Many people act out of fear, fear of missing opportunities, fear of losing, fear of not having enough. They make investment, spending, or refusal decisions, not from clarity, but from subconscious anxiety. Such actions rarely produce lasting results because they are not in resonance with the vibration of prosperity. In contrast, those who live in prosperity thinking act from a place of inner stillness. They are not driven by emotion but guided by trust. They may move slower than others, but every step is grounded, purposeful, and in harmony. Another profound technique is to establish a new relationship with value. Do not measure your worth by what you possess, but by the presence you bring into any space you enter. When you walk into a room with clarity in your energy, when you listen to others with your whole heart, when you work with a spirit of contribution rather than expectation, you are increasing value, not through form, but through essence. The universe does not respond to outward appearances. It responds to inner substance. When you become the bearer of value, prosperity cannot help but be drawn to you. The third principle is to create space for prosperity to unfold. If your life is overcrowded with worry, schedules, obligations, and noise, supply has no room to flow in. Just as a river cannot pour into a lake that is already full, you must learn to empty. Empty your mind, empty your expectations, empty your need to control. Spend time each day in stillness, not to achieve anything, but to remember. When you reconnect with the bright emptiness of your soul, you open a sacred space where everything you need has already been prepared. All you must do is be present to receive it. A practical method you can apply is vibrationally integrated visualization. Do not merely imagine the outcome you desire. Feel it with all your senses. Imagine yourself living in a space filled with light, where you have no worries about money, where the work you do brings joy and value, where every person you meet is a meaningful connection. Do not only see it with the eye of the mind, feel it in your heart, your cells, your breath. In the world of energy, vibration shapes form. When you feel it first, reality will follow. This is not fantasy. It is training your consciousness to live from a higher frequency. Finally, live as a prosperous person, not to prove anything, but to affirm the truth. Give without worry. Invest in yourself without hesitation. Be grateful before receiving. Open your heart before seeing results. Choose generosity before having a reason. Each such act is a silent declaration that you do not live in a limited world. You walk with the Source, and the Source never lacks. When you practice these principles and techniques consistently, you will find yourself no longer haunted by the question, how can I have more? Instead, you will be liberated by the question, what am I allowing to be expressed through me? The answer will not come from outside. It will arise from the deepest place within you, the place where you do not need to strive to be prosperous, because you are already the living expression of abundance itself. Conclusion: reaffirming your sacred power and responsibility. You have journeyed from the first spark of awareness to the deepest layers of transformation, not to discover something new, but to remember what you have always been. Everything that has been spoken, written, I heard, and received was never meant to add more information, but to free you from the false identification with the body, circumstances, and limitations. In the end, you are not someone who needs healing. You are the one who has always carried within you the power to restore divine order. And now, after each layer of awareness has been awakened, after each step of practice has been laid down, what remains is only the reaffirmation. Reaffirmation is not an outward act, but a quiet whisper to yourself, a reminder that needs no noise, no drama. It is simply a return, silent yet unshakable, to the essence that has always been present. You are a child of God. You were not born in lack. You did not grow out of randomness. You do not live for a temporary purpose. You come from the source of power, and you carry within you a sacred mission that cannot be replaced. It is not a burden, but a privilege, not a responsibility born of pressure, but a commitment born of love. You may have forgotten, you may have wandered, you may have identified with fear, smallness, or pain, but that changes nothing about the truth. Like the sun hidden behind clouds, the light within you has never gone out. And now, as the clouds begin to part, as awareness has been illuminated, you are no longer the one seeking the light. You are the one allowing it to shine forth, not from personal strength, but from union with the Source. Every word you speak from this moment is an act of creation. Every thought you hold sends ripples into the collective field of human consciousness. Every choice, no matter how small, shapes who you are and what you express. You are no longer anonymous in the great design of the universe. You are an inseparable part of it, a vital link in the stream of evolving consciousness. And for that reason, you cannot return to living as before. You cannot go back to unconsciousness, to judgment, to blame, or to running away, not because you are forced to move forward, but because your soul is ready. From now on, you will no longer ask, how do I change my life? But rather, how do I live true to what I already know? How do I love as one who has been healed? How do I give as one who is no longer lacking? How do I walk as one who has united with the Source? You do not need perfection, only awareness. You do not need to prove anything, only to live in alignment with what you have realized. And each day, in every small action, will be a wordless reaffirmation that you have chosen to live with your full presence. Power does not come from control, but from cooperation with infinite wisdom. You do not need to know every step ahead, only to trust that each step is guided. You do not need certainty, only the commitment not to turn back. This is a journey without a fixed map, but with a compass that is eternally true, the voice within, and as has been said many times, this is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Asterisk, a space that is quiet yet complete. That needs no explanation, yet is perfectly clear. That requires no effort, yet is more powerful than anything else. You may forget at times, you may doubt, you may grow weary, but with a single breath, a single pause, you can return. For the place you must return to is not far away. It is here in this breath, in this presence, in the awareness you hold right now. And each return is a reaffirmation: I am not divided. I am not alone. I am not lacking. I am the living expression of life. I am part of the divine plan. I am here in the right time, the right place, and the right state of consciousness. And as you begin to live as an awakened soul, you will see everything start to change. Not because you control it, but because you resonate at a different frequency. The things you once chased will begin to find you. What you once tried to change on the outside will adjust itself to the change within. Life will no longer be a chain of reactions, but a deliberate act of creation. No longer a journey of survival, but a journey of expression. Let the close of this journey not be a final period, but a new confirmation for a higher path. From this day forward, you do not need to seek guidance. You are the bearer of light. You are the one who has remembered, and for that reason, you carry the responsibility to safeguard that light, not just for yourself, but for the world, not by making noise, but by a presence that is quiet yet unshakable, not through grand gestures, but through the way you live, love, and choose in the smallest moments of each day. For a person living in awareness is a beam of light in the vast web of illumination. And when that light is held steady, all of humanity is lifted. You do not need to know exactly whom you are helping or what you are changing. You need only live true to what you have realized. And that is enough. You have come this far not to learn something new, but to reaffirm what you have always been. Not someone weak, not a victim, not a person controlled by circumstances. You are a creator. You are the embodiment of infinite supply, unconditional love, and absolute wisdom. And now, after all you have heard, remembered, and felt, step into the world not as someone searching for a miracle, but as a miracle that is living and breathing in the world. You do not need to try to shine. You only need to live as if you have never forgotten that light